Last year, after more than 30 years of making wine elsewhere, Mark Beringer found an unexpected ad and decided to answer it. It would lead him to becoming the first Beringer in nearly a century to be the head winemaker at the winery co-founded by his great-great-grandfather 140 years ago. I'll be talking to Mark behind Beringer Vineyards' famous Rhine House in Healdsburg, where he'll share with us his comprehensive knowledge of the Napa Valley wine region and his plans for Beringer's renowned reserve program for Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon. Mark, the history of the winery goes back to 1876, your ancestors. So do you know why did they come here? How did that all happen?
Well, it was founded by two German immigrant brothers, Jacob and Frederick Beringer. Jacob happens to be my great-great-grandfather. Jake wanted to make great wines and heard about this place out here in the West. And in 1875, they purchased 215 acres, and then in 1876 made their first wine.
And the last Beringer that was here before you returned?
My great-great-grandfather was the first winemaker, and he made the wines until 1911, and then was taken over by his son, Jacob Jr. He was the last Beringer to make the wines until I took over last year, and I'm only the 8th winemaker to make the wines here in 140 years.
A lot of people use reserve and private, but what does it mean at Beringer?
We were one of the first wineries to coin the phrase, but it actually evolved out of the term private stock that was used by the family even prior to that. And that was considered actually the wines that were kept for personal use. Later, it was one of the wines that we kept around as being extra special, more time in barrel. Unfortunately, the term has been maybe overused in our industry since, but if you buy a bottle of Beringer and it says Private Reserve, that is our very best wine that we offer.
Napa Valley Chardonnay has a worldwide reputation. Will you change the style, keep the style?
It's been something that's been a hallmark wine for Beringer all these years, so it's not something we want to tinker with too much. However, we want to evolve and continue to work forward, and I think for me, I like to see wines go well with food. We still want to have that nice viscosity, that nice mouthfeel from the surly contact and the barrel aging. That will still be there, but we want the oak to be a little less present. We want it to show up on the finish maybe instead of right up front in the forward palate.
It might be fun to just talk a little bit about the differences in style between Knights Valley and Napa Valley.
Knights Valley is an area that my family pioneered in the late 60s. When you reach the end of the Napa Valley in Calistoga, you kind of run into a hill there, but if you go up and over that hill, you hit another valley, which is Knights, and it's geologically very similar to Napa Valley in a lot of ways.
Would you say the Napa Cabernet is richer than Knights, or?
Knights Valley is actually more of a bowl, so the fog pattern moves a little differently there. Stylistically, that creates a wine that's a little softer and a little more approachable in its youth.
Mark, Beringer's one of the top Cabernets in Napa that has a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon in it, but what about the source of this wine? And tell us a little bit about how it comes together.
Yeah, one of the great things about this wine is the vineyards that we have available to us to blend from. We have vineyards on Spring Mountain, Mount Veeder, Howell Mountain, as well as right here around the winery on the valley floor. These are fantastic, beautiful vineyards that year in, year out produce consistent results.
Mountain versus floor?
The valley floor fruit tends to be a little on that riper, jammier, fruitier side.
Yeah.
The mountain fruit brings a lot of the structure and power to the wine and more of the darker fruits. So if it's a warmer year, we might focus more on the areas in the mountains where it's cooler, and vice versa. In a year where it might be a little bit cooler, we get better ripeness down in the valley floor.
We drove up early this morning. It was really foggy. Now the sun is out. Are you a fan of one or the other, or both? Or
if it wasn't for the fog, this place wouldn't be what it is. It's that cooling effect at night that retains our acidity and gives us ageability and structure. But it's the heat during the day, once the fog peels back, that actually brings the ripeness and the sugar levels up to get those really bright fruit characteristics.
Well, Mark, your 32nd vintage is coming up. That's a good long run. How would you describe what you're doing now, perhaps, and what you've been doing the last few decades?
It's really to come back home and be able to make wines in my family's legacy is an opportunity to be able to tell my family's story and to be able to share its history. So it's very special for me to be back.